Hello, and thank you for joining me on A Psychologist Looks at Scripture. I'm Peter Doherty, a Catholic priest and a psychologist, and I'm delighted you're here. In this podcast, I draw from my background in psychology and scripture studies to provide fresh insights into the Gospels. The Gospels consistently invite us to deepen our faith, find new wisdom, and grow spiritually. There's always something more to discover together. Each episode typically runs about 7 to 10 minutes. I know my listeners are busy, so I keep my podcasts short. If you have time and are interested, please check out the earlier episodes listed on the podcast website and on YouTube. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. They truly matter. They help this podcast grow and flourish. Today we're focusing on the Gospel according to Luke chapter 14, verse 1 and verse 7 to 14. This Gospel will be read in churches on August the 31st, 2025. Today's Gospel begins with Jesus accepting an invitation to dine with one of the leading Pharisees. During this gathering, Jesus shares a teaching inspired by his observations that challenges the conventional understanding of social status. He emphasizes a reversal of worldly status through humility. But what exactly did Jesus mean by humility? There are many passages in the Gospels where Jesus focuses on humility as a necessary trait for developing a deeper relationship with God. I've selected 5 of those passages for us today. In Mark chapter 9, verse 35, Jesus says, "Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all." This calls his followers to be humble themselves by caring for others' needs rather than just their own. This passage touches on the community aspect of our faith. It's not just me and God, but us. People from individualist cultures may find this gospel a bit challenging. In Mark chapter 10, verse 43 to 45, Jesus nuances his teachings described in Mark 9, chapter 35 by teaching, "Whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many." Here, humility is shown as serving others. Jesus will later go on to describe what he means by others. I invite you to check out the edition of this podcast released on October the 27th, 2024, where I speak about who are our neighbors. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 to 30, Jesus invites those who are weary to come to him, saying, "For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." This passage highlights his humble and compassionate nature. As followers of Christ, we must struggle to embrace the mind and heart of Jesus as we are called to be gentle and humble. In Luke chapter 22, verse 42, in the Garden of Gethsemane, describes Jesus praying the words, "Not by my will, but yours be done," demonstrating his submission and humility to God's will. Keep in mind the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane was made just hours before his betrayal by Judas and his arrest by the temple guards. Accepting God's will in our life is challenging, especially when we don't understand or agree with God's will. I urge my listeners to read Matthew chapter 20, verse 1 to 16, which is the parable of the workers in the vineyard. This beautiful story illustrates the complexity, yet ironically the simplicity of God's will and a sense of justice. Lastly, in John chapter 5, verse 30, Jesus states, "I can of myself do nothing. I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me," expressing his humble recognition of his dependence on the Father and that God sustains even when we are not aware. It's clear that humility is necessary for our spiritual development. But is humility good for us psychologically? To answer this question, it is critical to recognize that there is both healthy and unhealthy humility. When then is humility healthy? It's important to distinguish healthy humility from toxic humility. Toxic humility usually involves harsh self-criticism or self-deprecation rooted in poor self-esteem, or the deliberate putting oneself down to elicit praise from others. Unhealthy humility is manipulative. I remember a situation occurred when I was a young priest. I met this woman who was very smart and capable, but for some reason she kept putting herself down. I noticed that after by watching her for a while, that when she put herself down, others would tease her and try to build her up emotionally. I soon got tired of this pattern of behavior, so one time I just agreed with her when she started to put herself down. Wow. She was very upset with me, and I quickly realized that I was not following her script. I am much older now and hopefully a bit wiser. I now realize that I could have been more charitable, but nonetheless, my agreement did expose her toxic humility. Positive humility is knowing yourself. You know your strengths and your weaknesses. You give thanks for your faith, the people in your life who were your mentors, and those who have supported you and even challenged you. You know your weaknesses and are actively trying to do better. The grace of a healthy humility is the ability to self-forgive and forgive others. Jesus touches on this theme in Matthew chapter 7, verse 3-5. It's about removing the log in your own eye before removing the speck in your friend's eye. Research into positive psychology and mental health reveals that healthy humility supports mental well-being as well as helping us to develop our spirituality. I want to mention several ways humility helps us develop. Humble people often experience more happiness, less depression, and reduced anxiety. They achieve this by maintaining an accurate self-awareness without self-disparagement, acknowledging their limitations while also acknowledging and valuing others' perspectives. They're less threatened by others having different opinions and beliefs. Humility allows acceptance of difficult emotions and imperfection. Humility fosters an openness to feedback, helping people cope with setbacks and building stronger relationships. I'm still studying this, but I'm beginning to think that humility often leads to curiosity about others' views and life in general. Humility enables individuals to accept struggles and to seek help, promoting progress and the ability to recognize destructive thought patterns and habits. They do not allow their pride to prevent them from getting help. Healthy humility involves balancing self-respect with respect for others, avoiding self-neglect or loss of personal boundaries. Through Jesus' teachings and examples, Jesus teaches us that humility can be the key to personal growth, inner peace, and happiness. Combined with our faith, humility provides us with the opportunity to grow in our spirituality. Thank you for being here today. Next Sunday, I'm releasing a podcast about the cost of discipleship. If you're new to this podcast, I invite you to check out previous episodes on major podcast platforms or YouTube. Regular YouTube listeners, please consider subscribing and sharing with friends who have an interest in Scripture. A new episode is released every Sunday, focusing on the next week's gospel. Just a reminder, I also appreciate your feedback and any particular questions that you have. A special thanks for Heather Patel-Doherty and Richard Colomb for their invaluable assistance in preparing each episode of this podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out at peter.doherty, that's DOHERTYOMI, @gmail.com. May God bless you abundantly.